Welcome back to the most news in the morning. Mexico is offering cold, hard cash to fight back against deadly drug lords and their cartels. Mexican officials say they'll pay out $2 million each for tips leading to the arrest of the country's top 24 drug lords. Mexico's drug violence has killed more than 9,000 people since 2006. And some of that violence is, of course, as we've been reporting here on CNN, is spilling north into the United States. And, you know, it's not uncommon to hear people say the answer to the drug problem really is to tackle demand, and to do that, maybe legalize marijuana as well as other drugs. Our next guest takes it much further. He says that we really need to legalize all of it, everything: cocaine, heroin, meth. Collect the cash that'll come with it. Joining me now is Harvard economist Jeffrey Miron. Thanks so much for being with us this morning.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
There seems to be a difference in people's minds about the legalization of marijuana, which seems to enjoy broader support than the legalization of all drugs. Why do you say just legalizing marijuana is not enough?
Well, legalizing marijuana would certainly be a very useful first step. But a lot of the violence that we're seeing, a lot of the underground market, is not related to marijuana. It's related to these other drugs. So if we were only to do marijuana, we would only have a small impact on all the violence, on all the corruption, on all the disruption of other countries that's caused by U.S. prohibition of drugs and the U.S. forcing prohibition of drugs on other countries.
This is what I want to ask you about. We talk about what's going on at the U.S.-Mexico border. We've talked about the growing violence in some measure because Mexico's trying to crack down a little bit more on these cartels. Can you explain, as you compare what our drug policy is to prohibition, and why you feel that, you know, trying to make alcohol illegal failed, and we're learning the hard lessons about trying to make drugs illegal?
I mean, any attempt to drive a market underground, to ban it, to prohibit it, means that it may shrink a little bit, but it's mainly just going to become an underground market. That's what we saw for alcohol in the 20s and 30s. That's what we've seen for drugs. That's what we've seen in other societies and other times for gambling, for prostitution, for all these things. And in underground markets, people resolve their disputes with violence because they can't use lawyers and courts and advertising. And so guns are the only logical alternative, and we observe that over and over again with any kind of prohibition.
Well, while you may be theoretically right, isn't there just a sort of common sense argument? Somebody could have a couple glasses of wine over dinner. You can't really be a social user of injecting heroin.
Well, the fact is that people can use many drugs, including heroin, for long periods, okay, if they have access to a legal supply that's a moderate price, if they're able to consume it in a way which is not inherently dangerous, such as injecting and sharing dirty needles. And of course, people can do horrible things with alcohol if they're going to be irresponsible. People who use tobacco in a regular way risk very serious negative consequences. For all these other dangerous things, potentially dangerous things, we keep them legal, but we tax and regulate them, and we address the irresponsible uses with things like drunk driving laws, but we keep the market above ground, which avoids all these negative things like the violence.
I mean, would you go to a doctor who said, you know, I just occasionally use heroin on the weekends? I mean, would you get a surgery from a doctor like that? Would you want your kids going to nursery school where their teachers say, you know, I do some meth and trying to keep my weight down?
The fact is that we're all doing that now. We just don't know it. Okay, we are going to doctors who may be alcoholics, who may be misusing currently illegal drugs. Some of the teachers of our kids are doing all those things on the weekends, but it's just been pushed underground. So by bringing it above ground, we're more likely to know about it. We're more likely to be able to use things like drug testing procedures to address the irresponsible uses of drugs on or off the job. Pretending that we're getting rid of it with prohibition is clearly not changing the fact. We know that millions and millions of people are doing these things every day, but we're pretending that it's not there. It's already a problem.
I know that, you know, the article that you wrote, and it was very thoughtful. I'm playing devil's advocate here with you, but how do we find a way to tax or get income off of what's still going to be illegal, right, internationally? I mean, if people are bringing drugs over here illegally, even though we may say they're legal here, how do we control all of that traffic? How do we control all of that revenue that's coming in and find a way to tax it and have it work?
Well, if we were to actually legalize it, I have no doubt that most of the rest of the world would immediately legalize as well. The U.S. historically has been the biggest advocate of prohibition. We, in fact, forced it on the rest of the world in 1919 as a condition of signing the treaty that ended World War I. I'm sure that lots of Latin American governments would be delighted to legalize because a huge amount of the corruption and violence in their countries is due to U.S. pressure to maintain this policy.
Very interesting, and I encourage people to read your article as well. Jeffrey Miron, Harvard University economist. Thanks for being with us this morning.
My pleasure. Thank you.